ALTBAYS. ALTBAYS. ALTBAYS.
Yo, what? We're live. What? Is that me?
There's a bit of a crackle.
Bit of a crackle.
Don't think it's me.
Cell phones? Could be mine. Let's see.
Oh.
Oh. Yes. We're live. ALTBAYS Show brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz. This is our show number 51. Whoop, whoop, whoop. It's been an amazing journey. Thanks for everyone who has subscribed to our channel, who supports our platform, who likes our videos, who talks about our show out there in the streets, who recommends it to a friend, who says that it's not that good. It's fine. You can say whatever you want to say. We're all good, okay? And if this is your first show, welcome. My name is Leo. Best way to support our platform is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We go live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Always bringing very interesting and exciting people from all over New Zealand, and especially from the Coromandel. Okay, so if you subscribe, it means that this channel grows and we can bring more and more and more interesting people to have a chat with. Okay, it's been a cool journey so far. We're learning a lot, that's for sure. A few things before we start. Holiday coming up, which is pretty cool. So my beautiful band, Let's Go Descarrego, will be playing on Saturday at the Top 10 Holiday Park in Hot Water Beach. It's the Light Festival. So if you are around, if you're going to stay there for the night, or if you're planning a trip to the Coromandel, that's the place to be. We start at 7:30 p.m. And on Sunday, on the 5th, we're playing at the mighty Luke's Kitchen. So get there early for dinner, find a cool table, grab your drink, grab your beer from Blue Fridge Brewery to watch Let's Go Descarrego. I think we start around 6 p.m. So come a bit earlier, get the sunset, and enjoy a boogie with Leo and Stu. I also want... Yeah, I know, right?
I love those boys.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention the show Mamma Mia that is happening in Thames with our adorable Brielle, who came here for a show. So I just want to send a big kiss and congratulations to the team. I heard the play is amazing. Unfortunately, I don't think our team will be able to get there. We've been quite busy with our shows, but kudos. Thank you so much for bringing the art to our community. We need more. We need more. We need more. Hi, Fabian.
How you doing?
Oh, man. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. You on a bit of a buzz. You got some notices. Oh, I got a notice. I wanted to sell a car.
Oh, yeah?
It's an old car.
Say it.
The 2003 Honda Civic.
Ooh.
Old gold, I suppose you'd call it. Sort of pale.
Is it the one that I take it sometimes for a ride?
Yeah.
It drives very well. It's very fast.
Yeah. New Zealand new. 2003 New Zealand new. 100,000 Ks on the dial. Yeah. We're the second owners. First time. I'm not going to get into it. It's a bit of fun.
Family car?
Oh, yeah. It's nice.
Which means you will find all the leftovers of the cookies and all the...
Mandarin peel.
Chip packets.
Oh,
yep.
No, not really chip packets. We avoid those. We never get little small packets. No.
Okay, how much?
I don't know, probably $2,500, $2,000. Yeah, we just want to get it out of the way.
Fair.
It's a steal. Are you going to get an e-car now? Or an e-bike?
That's actually something. We have a new car in the house for my wife's work. We have a brand new, and this is a new, I've never had this word before, a brand new car, a Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross plug-in hybrid.
Yo!
Wow.
You're my man.
And I got to have a little drive in it today. Don't tell Alistair Brickle. That there's a battery in there. Two battery engines. One in the front, one in the back.
So you're not gonna charge in the garage?
Not going to charge in the garage because he's scared the poop out of me.
Yeah. The video was legit, right?
Yeah, you showed the video, yeah.
What was his video? I missed it, sorry.
Oh, there's a bus in bus in France, and the batteries are stored on the roof. And of course, big explosion, very hot, high heat, melting liquid. Everyone got off. It was fine in terms of casualties, but quite frightening a spectacle. Like a really nice fireworks display. And legitimate, awful, horrible. Of course, combustion engines are up every day, but that was, it was a big explosion. You wouldn't get that out of your regular engine.
No, well, Alistair's a climate denier, so No worries.
That's how we start on our Monday show. And a horn.
And a horn. That's the voice, the purple top. No mining.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to talk about that because I've got some stuff to say about no mining.
Let's dive straight into it then.
Yep, that's why I'm here.
What's happening? What's the thing with climate change?
Well, it's happening. There are various people, of course, who deny it, but I believe in the science. I've known ever since Greenpeace started sending its boats up into the Arctic Circle in the 1990s and started measuring ice depth. It became pretty obvious pretty quickly that ice was minimising. And so ever since then, I guess I've dedicated a lot of my thinking and hopefully some of my mahi to doing what I can to help turn the boat around, so to speak, and get some common sense applied to this crisis. I'm about to have my first grandchild.
Woo!
I want a future for that child. Every time I hear someone pushing their accelerator down and zooming off, I think, dear God, that's another few seconds off the life, not only of my grandchild, but also of the planet and the world that we are trying to live in concert with.
I suppose, to be fair, the argument I've heard from a few people that names have been thrown around a bit in the last many years. I don't think I've heard the argument that the climate isn't changing. I think the denial is that humans are responsible for the change that is occurring. Is that fair to say?
Well,
that made the argument that they present?
It's the argument, but it's as far as I'm concerned, a false argument. Basically, since the Industrial Revolution, we've started releasing a lot more carbon into the atmosphere. It's the speed at which we've been doing that is so different. And sure, there's been, big volcanic events and meteorites hitting the planet and so forth in the past, but this one is clearly attributable to humankind's use of fossil fuels. Oil is a stored energy, as we know, and it should stay stored. But we've discovered, and to our benefit, that's the only reason we're sitting in the studio today with all this gadgetry, it's because of the energy that oil holds. So from now on, we have to use that very, very carefully because we can't continue to use that kind of energy in the frivolous way we have.
I've heard similar words from Elon Musk years ago. It's sort of a big oil rally. Going there, everyone's saying, electric cars are never going to take off, and there'll always be another hole in the ground with oil. And he sort of looked at them all, was like, "You're wrong."
Yeah.
Clearly, no one has denied that this is happening in his weird little, in his Aspergic manner that he speaks. But the room sort of shut up as soon as he started reasoning with them.
And that's the fact. And the science actually is all there. And I really feel for the scientists. They've since the big reports back in the 80s, that and beyond and earlier than that even, it's been obvious to science that we are creating man-induced change. There's too many of us using too much energy, consuming too much stuff. We have to really now start thinking about totally new concepts of degrowth, simplification, being satisfied with less. I think of it as changing our lives towards caring and to community and to culture. Three things which don't take a whole lot of stuff, but they take what we're doing here together, fellowship, the beauty of music, for example, conversation, looking after each other as people who are neighbours.
There's an interesting paradox there because I'm with you. I agree with you. At the same time, the more I listen to people talking about how humans could be exploring more the space to actually benefit ourselves, I always think about that. I'm always like, because I don't have knowledge enough to make sense of that, but I always think that like if we would live in a society that is more equal and there's more compassion, we would have so many more resources actually to do those experiments and studies. But it's just a very small percentage of people who holds all that wealth and power, and they're driving, they're doing the thing to get there, but they are completely ignoring the rest of the people here. So I think often, if there's ever going to be a balance there, if we're going to win with compassion and at the same time take us to find out more about this place, because it is a beautiful thing to do. I don't take that from them, but I always think if the balance is possible in this society that we live at the moment.
Of course, balance is possible, but we actually need to get enough people to embrace that. And obviously we embrace it through our systems, and I'm sure at some stage we're going to talk about how we do that. But I'm like you. I mean, I'm one of those nutters who, when I wake up in the night, I go out on the porch and I look. Have you seen the planets? And even though I often have differences of opinion on a number of things with Alistair, for example, I really respect his knowledge about the stars and the planets. And at the moment, we've got this beautiful lineup of the planets, which I've been watching a lot. And we've also now got this extra joy and knowledge as we come to celebrate Matariki. So, all the time there's options and opportunities.
The Disney film Hercules talks about the stars and planets lining up, and it actually works out as a bad idea. The Titans get released and they take over Mount Olympus. So if it does happen, that would be so cool. And yet at the same time, I think with the volcanoes erupting everywhere, it's probably going to put a bit more pollution in the atmosphere, isn't it?
Yeah, well, there's all that stuff. But, there's all that beautiful time, if you've ever spent time out in the mountains or on the sea, which I've been fortunate enough to do for spells. If you were out in the desert, as the wonderful Arabian people of the desert did, and brought us mathematics, what's that mathematical thing?
Geography? Geometry?
Geometry.
There you go.
Hey, audience, they've given me a wine.
It's vegan.
It's vegan.
Yeah.
It's part of us to always think outwards. If we can see out, and in New Zealand we can, and we've got these beautiful opportunities for seeing into space, which also means, strangely enough, New Zealand's sending as many things into space. We're, I think, the fourth largest space operator now as any other big nation, which is kind of interesting.
I think a lot of people would like to say that New Zealand doesn't play a big role in the damages with climate change because of the size of the country, but then we see like ridiculous numbers. I was just reading 2 days ago, a friend from Germany sent me, hi Matt, that New Zealand now, it's the one that takes more water to produce a liter of milk, and it's just the animal agriculture, like it's out of control in New Zealand, and it's really affecting the water in the Canterbury area.
Absolutely. 1,000 litres of water to produce 1 litre of milk. And then when you actually look at the degradation as well with the water, it really doesn't compute. Those areas used to have quite different agricultural and horticultural applications. And it's since we started industrialising the dairying, the white gold, that we now have huge pollutions, and which are increasingly being started to be linked with cancers and also, unfortunately, problems with babies as well. So big ups to Mike Joy and also to Greenpeace and Steve Abel, who are really pursuing that. We've seen a lot of political manipulation of Environment Canterbury to try and close them down when they have tried to expose this. All the elected people were at one stage chucked out because it wasn't very convenient to the government of the day. 2 or 3 summers ago, I was with a friend and we travelled up the east coast of the South Island, and we were virtually in tears. You go across these huge bridges across what should be braided rivers arriving at the sea. There was no water in them because it's all been taken off for the dairying. And, I mean, I appreciate, I actually do still like milk in my tea. I drink oats and all that stuff every now and then, but if you start looking at the labels, that's all come from bloody Sweden or California where there's no water anyway or whatever. We've really got to rethink it. All these problems usually come when you start industrialising systems, but that's a big issue.
New Zealand has recently approved the emission reduction plan. Is that correct?
Can I jump on this? Because I'm loving all these little topics that are coming up. Driving with tears in your eyes is not safe, but the message was clear. Some bad stuff's happening, but I want to know a bit more about who are you? How did you come to have these?
We were getting there, but it was just so good.
Because I want to get there. Because there's so many interesting things. But how do you fit into, say, Greenpeace? Where's your journey begin in the world and environment and caring?
There you go.
Oh my God!
It's a big question.
Okay, it's a big question. You've got a few years.
Oh yeah,
we got time. We got time and wine.
We're on ALTBAYS. It's our biggest criticism. We've got time.
I'm gonna put my chair back.
Well, I guess I'm a 5th generation New Zealander. I was born in 1953 in Tauranga. My mum and dad had a little flat in 5th Avenue, which at that stage was the edge of town. My dad was an amputee, having been in a sawmilling accident. He'd had to take over his family's sawmilling business when he was 14 or 15. Yeah, on his arm.
So he lost an arm. Left arm?
Which one was it?
Right arm.
Right arm.
How much did he lose?
From below the elbow.
Oh.
Yeah. So I knew right from the word go, without knowing about it consciously, that there was something different. Anyway, so he couldn't get work. Because of that, people seem to think if you've lost a limb that you've also lost your mind.
Was he right-handed?
Yes. Yes.
Did he retain any mobility in the joint?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, okay,
At the time of the accident, the tourniquet, somebody put it on above his elbow, but he had the presence of mind to have it moved.
Oh, good man.
Yeah, and I loved my dad. So over time, I became my dad's companion when he had a little boat. We moved to Hamilton.
You were his right-hand man. That is just brilliant.
I was.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so I always had to row the dinghy and do the anchor work and so forth, but I also got the plus of lots of really nice peaceful time with my dad and an exposure to a nice lifestyle.
It'd be quite nice to have the power of him. No, I don't want to go in yet. Let him row, you just go around in circles. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Oh, well, it gave me a few challenges, rowing in and out at Hahei when we had our boat there over summer holidays and things like that. Yeah, so anyway, loved my dad, and he was someone who was determined to do well for all of us and worked 7 days a week. He went back to night school before the days where night schools were cancelled, which is a project I'd really love to take up again and get night school back up and running. So he studied his heating and engineering and started up a business and ended up employing 80 people in Hamilton and selling boiler and heating and ventilating systems throughout the South Pacific. And he had a little logging business with his brother in Aotearoa, so I was exposed to that.
Active man.
Yeah. Meantime, my mother was going crazy because he was never home. And she had 4 children under 5. She was suffering depression, as one does. I've suffered that myself for a bit.
Do you remember understanding, making sense of that relationship at home with dad working a lot, mum?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. We used to, my mum would have us sitting, this was when we were living in Hamilton by this stage, sitting at the window going, 1, 2, 3, daddy, 1, 2, 3, daddy. So I
So
grew
you
to
counted
know.
some big numbers in the end.
Yeah, but my mother dragged herself out of a hole, and she and some good friends actually became foundation members of marriage guidance and family planning for New Zealand, because of course in those days you didn't have contraception easily available. So my mum would go off into the dark, foggy nights of the Waikato in the middle of winter to run mother-daughter evenings and father-son evenings to educate people about sex and how to not get pregnant. And that, of course, had to be funded. So from the age of about 3, I learnt about, at those days we had glass milk bottles with aluminium tops. I was really good at washing aluminium milk bottle tops, which were fundraisers, and our living room was always full of jumble for the jumble sales too. So I started at kind of an early age, really.
It was a good technique for mom to go in the middle of the night. That's a nice way to teach people how to not have babies. Knock at the door in the middle of the night.
Get in the way.
That's handy. That's a good technique.
I never thought of that before.
Oh, there you go.
Nothing kills the moment like
But the other
18
good...
years. 18 years you're responsible for that child.
Yeah.
What? What? Financially. What? Legally. What?
But the other really good thing about my parents was they loved to party. So
Oh, yeah.
all this hard work and angst, we used to have the most marvellous parties, and I guess that's why I still like to party.
And I read something that your parents were social creditors. Can you explain that to us, please? Because that kind of influenced you quite a lot, right? Is
Yeah.
that right to say?
Yeah, well, social credit really grew strong after the war. There was it started in England, and the whole idea was, listen, we can't have the banks, which are the root of many evils. I won't say all evils, but
95%.
well, you know, they have become entrenched in our way of operating ever since things like the Bank of England started in sort of the 1600s and things.
Shout out to Monica, my cousin. You working for the devil. You're a minion and you're in the system. Sort it out, Monica.
Okay.
Not good.
Yeah, well, interesting. I mean, it's another story, but we did campaign for Kiwi Bank to have a New Zealand bank formed, and that was one of the political movements I was involved in, and I think that's a great win for the New Zealand people. But back to social credit. So the basic premise is that if you borrow from the banks, you're going to be paying interest, which means you're in debt. I was interested to hear from a very wise friend of mine that the Hebrew words for debt and slavery are the same.
Wow, fantastic.
And for me, that was like a real aha moment. So social credit used, and I think still say they're now called the Democratic Party, that the government shouldn't be borrowing from private banks. And remember, banks, for the most part, are private. In other words, they're making profit for people, and we hear about that all the time. So they always believed that if, for example, well, the favourite topic, the Pepe Bridge in Tairoa, if you wanted to pay for that, rather than going off to the Bank of New Zealand, which is actually owned by Australia, right? After many manipulations, but we won't go into that. So instead of going off to a bank and paying interest, you would borrow from the the Bank of the New Zealand people, you would say, okay, if the people of our area want that bridge, then we will create the credit so that it can be built, and then over time, through rates and taxes, that debt will be dispelled and paid back. So it becomes a zero effect. And you won't be paying, as I think, Fabian, you just mentioned, an extra $500,000 on your loan for your house. It's the same for a bridge. But the mechanism was that it would have to be voter approved. So in other words, you couldn't just get some people in who would just willy-nilly do that. So that's fundamental social credit philosophy. At the time, the democracy,
post World War II at the time.
And when was I born? So in the sort of 60s and 70s, social credit was really big, and into the 80s. They were social credit candidates were getting 20% of the vote in New Zealand, but only getting one seat in Parliament because the system was totally corrupted. Well, corrupted, it wasn't representative. It was a two-party system, and so for anyone, no matter who you were, if you had a different point of view, you weren't in the running. So at that stage, the social credit single member of Parliament, Don Bethune, actually, along with other people, they staged a sit-in in Parliament and said, this isn't good enough, things have to change. And out of that really grew the effort to change our electoral system. And so in the 90s, I was very involved in that very big campaign to move from a first-past-the-post system with two only parties ever in the running.
Can you explain how that works? So, because we have a young audience that we're watching, so how did the voting system work?
They're probably asleep by now.
Nah, they love it. They love it.
Yeah, wake up.
Once in your day, wake up.
What, the MMP system?
Yeah, so how did it work in the 90s, and then how it may be different now, or how things changed, or what you changed to in the 90s?
Okay, so it was a two-step process. I think it was a good process to achieve at our new system. I would have preferred a single transferable vote system, which is what's used in Australia for the Senate. However, we've ended up with a mixed member proportional system. There were two major referendums over a 6-year period, asking, first of all, did New Zealanders want a change? And then when everyone voted, or enough people voted yes, then the next referendum was, okay, so what kind of system would you like? This was accompanied by a huge amount of education, social opportunity and pamphleting and letterboxes and so forth. And out of that, we got what we have now, which is 120 members, and half of our seats in Parliament are directly elected. Like the Coromandel electorate is an electorate. And there are 60 other electorates in New Zealand at the moment. That may change over time as our population numbers change. The other 60 seats are used to attend to the proportionality of what different parties actually achieve at the election. So last election, sorry, I don't remember the exact numbers, but Labour got a clear majority, so they got lots of seats. In the past, for example, the Greens, apart from one spell when Jeanette Fitzsimons held the Coromandel seat around 1999 to 2002, have had to rely on the party vote. So at any vote you might get a certain proportion of people who say, well, I'll vote for this person to be my local MP. And at the moment we've got a chap called Scott Simpson, who's from the National Party. But say, for example, I thought, yeah, Scott's my man, I'll vote for him. So that's your electorate vote. But actually, in general, I don't really like the direction of the National Party, so I'll vote Labour or ACT or Greens or TOP or
So you
whoever.
could like the person but prefer a party.
Exactly, or vice versa. Yeah. So the proportionality, it was set up so that that proportionality would be reflected ultimately in the number of people who actually sit in Parliament to represent you. So it's a pretty cool system, and so far working quite well, but it's quite interesting, the latest polls. Labour and National are equal pegging, potentially.
Could I just rewind that clock a smidgen? So we have some 16, 17-year-old kids at school at the moment. What's their voting experience? So they're going to go into a voting booth at some point in the next couple of years. It'll be their time to have a ticket. You saying they're going to go into a room and they're going to get a tick box of, okay, here's this many people who represent certain parties to be our local person, our local rep, to represent our views and whatever towards the government. And they're going to have a second slip of paper for the parties that they have, that have policies that you're more attuned to.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
And so how do you go about navigating that space? Like in real time, if you're in Whitianga right now and you want to find out, well, who are all the people that could take Scott Simpson's place to actually know what they could do? Are there even people qualified to do it? Where would I find names of people?
Yeah, well, at the moment we're not actually at the point where we're readying for another general election. So candidates won't have necessarily declared themselves yet. But what we are readying for is local elections, which we can talk about as well. But normally if you just want to Google, the different parties, they'll give you their policies, and then also probably talking about people in your area as well.
So before we go into the local one, because that was a great explanation for the MPs.
Was it clear?
It was super clear. It was super clear. I imagine with 2 glasses of wine, it would have been so much clearer. Nah, I'm joking. It was fantastic. But
I won't tell you about the gin I had before I came.
But
the devil.
Yeah.
But okay, cool. So we got the system. We understood that you vote for the person, you vote for the party.
Yep.
Now, for me, it's always interesting to go for the ethics of those people and those parties. So how does it work when it comes to campaign? Do they all have the same amount of money? Can they get money? Look at that laugh, my friends. Okay, because that's important, right? Like in my opinion, the ideals and the ideologies of one person shouldn't be more or less important because of the money that was put there. So how does the money play in the system that we live in?
Right. Well, that's really interesting. And over the last few years, there have been a number of legal challenges about where money has come from to certain parties. In particular, New Zealand First, Mr. Peters has been challenged.
Names are good. Thank you.
The National Party has been challenged, Labour to a lesser degree. I think the Greens are okay. I don't know about ACT. But just to kind of bring it to your attention, this year alone, ACT and the National Party have both received donations well in excess of $1 million, which is way more than any other parties. So, and you will already see that in some of the campaigns that are going on. I mean, I read them as campaigns. Stop Three Waters, no co-governance, all these various things.
So when you say donation, it means like legally, all the parties can spend the same amount, but you can receive donations. Is that what you mean?
You can spend, there are certain limits as a candidate, for example, that you can spend, but a party can, I think, I'd have to check, but
That's
I think
fine, yeah.
they can spend as much as they get. So if you've got the money, you've got the power.
So it's almost like taking it private.
Yeah.
You know, a government, equal world, but these ones with more money, the private people can go, oh, we'll just give them an extra couple 100,000.
Yeah.
They get a bit more airtime.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally unequal.
So then the responsibility of the media then, I've heard that, the media have to be equal and neutral. I've heard that a lot over many of the previous elections. But if you've got the money, pay for the airtime, right?
You got the money, honey, I got the time.
Because it's amazing at every election how many bills